You owe us $180,000. Those words hit me like a physical blow before my father even said hello. The ledger slammed onto the table, and suddenly I was no longer a daughter. I was an ATM. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. The kind that comes when you realize the numbers don't lie, but people do. Have you ever felt trapped by expectations that aren't yours? Let me tell you what I did next. The tension in the lunchroom was palpable as I turned my attention to Cody. My parents, confident in their carefully constructed narrative, expected me to falter, to give in to their moral blackmail, but I was steady. Cody leaned back, picking at his teeth, the picture of smug self-satisfaction basking in the unearned heroism they had built around him. I kept my voice soft, almost reverent, and asked him to recount that night in the alley, the night they insisted he saved me. His eyes darted nervously to our parents, ensuring they were watching. Then he launched into the story he'd told so many times, how he saw the shadows. First stepped in front of me, told me to run, and took the blow to his arm so I could escape. My mother sniffled, eyes glistening, convinced that their son was the hero the family needed. I watched Cody's face closely, the satisfaction of a liar who had repeated the story so often he had begun to believe it. And then the memory flashed sharp and unyielding. 10 years ago, I remembered the alley with painful clarity. Cody hadn't stepped in front of me. He had shoved me toward the gang, screaming, "Take her, she's the one you want." He ran, leaving me a 14-year-old girl as bait. The gang didn't touch me. They laughed, mocking his cowardice, then chased him down, because his fleeing made it entertaining. He suffered, yes, but not for me, for failing to save himself gracefully. The stark reality was unforgiving, but I held it in letting the truth simmer behind my calm exterior. Cody finished his dramatic reenactment, rubbing his arm for effect, and I tapped the screen of my phone, stopping the voice memo app. I had captured the confession in high definition, a crystal clear record of the foundation of their entire moral blackmail. The impact was immediate and electric. Cody's smugness faltered as he realized his performance was being immortalized, his narrative no longer under his control. My parents shifted in their seats, their calculated expressions of superiority cracking as they felt the weight of their own manipulation being documented. The room, once charged with anticipation for my compliance, changed frequency. Confusion and doubt replaced the aggressive posture they had rehearsed for weeks. I picked up the phone, my voice steady, and addressed the payment they demanded. Not with desperation or fear, but with the measured precision of someone who understood leverage. The lunch, meticulously planned by my parents to ambush me, had become a stage where their lies were exposed, and I was the auditor, calmly tracing every thread, ready to unravel the fabric of their carefully constructed deception. The psychological shift was undeniable. Cody, once a triumphant figure in their shared narrative, now sat exposed, the bravado replaced with discomfort. My parents, the architects of the manipulation, were confronted with the unsettling truth that their daughter had anticipated and recorded their every move, leaving them vulnerable in a way they had never imagined. I had transformed their weaponized family narrative into evidence, and the quiet authority I wielded at that table was absolute. Every glance, every subtle shift in posture reflected their realization. The daughter they had sought to control with guilt and theatrics was neither naive nor powerless. I sat there, voice low, controlled, and allowed the silence to do part of the work. It was a deliberate, careful dismantling of their story, and I could see palpably the fear and confusion ripple through them as the truth settled in. In that moment, the ledger on the table, the stories of heroism, and the familial expectations all became part of a record that would never lie, never bend. I had turned the anticipated attack into proof of deception, and in doing so, I regained control, poised and unflinching as the weight of their lies finally pressed down on them. It started in the dead of night, the kind of silence only broken by the hum of my laptop and the faint pulse of the city outside my window. At 2 a.m., a ping lit up my phone, automated and insistent, a high-risk personal loan inquiry in my name for $60,000. I didn't panic. I didn't call anyone in desperation. This was a professional signal, one I knew how to interpret. My fingers moved, with a deliberate calm, opening my laptop and diving into the digital trail, letting the forensic analyst in me take over. Tracing the application didn't require authority or panic. It required precision attention to the patterns, the timestamps, the digital fingerprints that most people would overlook. They were sloppy, but not careless enough to avoid being caught. A private network masked some activity, but their personal email logins betrayed them each movement, leaving a breadcrumb, a subtle signature that pointed unmistakably to one location: 42 Oak Street, my parents' house. I scrolled through the record's eyes, scanning for anomalies, patterns, and repetition. And there it was, one loan attempt, followed by another, a cascade of credit cards, personal loans, even a tentative reach into my retirement fund. This wasn't accidental. They were systematically hollowing out my financial future to pay for Cody's past. The audacity made the stomach tighten, but there was no fear, only clarity. I didn't strike immediately. In my world in forensic auditing, you don't move at the first sign of smoke. You wait until the arsonist is holding the match, until they believe they've gotten away with it. You wait until they're careless. And they were about to become complacent, eager to enforce their scheme at the Sunday lunch, to ambush me with their rehearsed performance, their lasagna, their speeches about family unity and debt. I let them prepare, observing from the shadows, gathering evidence silently. My mother's eyes, bright with predatory hope, were fixed on me as she moved through the motions of domesticity, believing that she was manipulating a compliant daughter. I allowed her the illusion, all while my case file was building quietly, methodically. I knew every line of code, every timestamp, every slip that would seal their exposure. 3 weeks of quiet, unseen investigation had culminated in this single moment of anticipation. I let the ledger rest on the table, knowing the truth of it, knowing they had exposed themselves by overconfidence. The calls went unanswered, the voicemails left in limbo. Every detail they had rehearsed, every smile, every tear, every gesture of moral superiority was cataloged, mirrored in my mind, and in encrypted drives. I was in control. I wasn't a victim. I was the auditor, the hunter, tracing invisible lines of fraud across screens and servers. Every click, every database, every IP address strengthened the web that would entrap them. As the lunch approached, I was ready not with force or anger, but with a quiet, inexorable certainty. The narrative they had planned to impose on me, the performance they believed would extract obedience, would instead collapse under the weight of evidence meticulously gathered, legally irrefutable, and perfectly timed. I had transformed what they saw as their ambush into a stage where their deception would be unveiled, where their financial manipulation would be exposed with surgical precision. Sitting at that table, I was the calm in the storm. They had created the unseen architect of their exposure. My expertise in forensic auditing, honed over years, allowed me to predict their moves, to understand their weaknesses, to convert their own greed and oversight into the tools that would dismantle their scheme. They had underestimated the quiet daughter, the reliable accountant, the professional who hunts ghosts in the machine. And in that patience, in that strategic restraint, I had not only gathered the evidence necessary to protect myself, but I had orchestrated the perfect moment to turn the tables, ensuring that when they acted, the record was already complete, unassailable, and devastatingly clear. Every fraudulent attempt, every careless login, every step of their systematic exploitation had been traced, cataloged, and prepared to become the cornerstone of their undoing. I had waited as the arsonist flaunted their fire, confident in their impunity, while I held the match they could not see. And when the moment of confrontation came, I would hold not anger or desperation, but certainty, knowledge, and the unwavering authority of one who had spent hours unraveling a lie so deep it had nearly consumed her. The table was set like a stage, the lasagna steaming and wine glasses catching the light, but the real performance was about to begin. Gary, his voice booming with false authority, leaned forward, reaching under the table to produce a thick manila envelope. "We have the paperwork ready," he said, his eyes scanning for signs of hesitation. Susan pushed it across the table toward me, past the gravy boat, her tone honeyed but insistent. "It's cleaner this way. We just want to help you manage the payments." I touched the envelope, feeling its weight, knowing exactly what was inside. Weeks of digital drafts had already shown me the truth. This wasn't a payment plan. It was a financial death sentence disguised as assistance. I smiled, the same calm, controlled smile I give to embezzlers, before sliding evidence across the table. "I can't sign this," I said, voice soft but unwavering. Gary's face darkened instantly. "What did you say?" he demanded, leaning forward as if the envelope could still compel me. "I can't sign it," I repeated, flat and clinical. Not because I didn't want to, but because the assets they were trying to leverage no longer existed. Confusion and disbelief rippled through the room. "What do you mean don't exist?" Susan's voice trembled, betraying the first cracks in their facade. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper, a photocopy of a cashier's check. "I sold the house," I said, calm as the morning light. 48 hours ago, closed the deal with a private investment firm, cash in hand. The equity is safe, inaccessible, and protected." Gary lurched from his seat chair, tipping back as shock overtook him. "You sold my house," he shouted, his voice a mix of rage and incomprehension. "It was never your house," I said, cold. "My name was on the deed, my name was on the mortgage, but it now belongs to a holding company in Delaware. You can't access it, borrow against it, or forge my signature." I watched the realization hit like a physical blow. Their eyes widened, the weaponized power of attorney in Susan's hand, now worthless, against my foresight and preparation. They had built a fortress of control around me, believing they could coerce compliance, but the tables had turned with surgical precision. I pointed toward Cody, who flinched at my gaze. "You needed that money because of him," I said, exposing the truth of his gambling debts and thefts, a trail they hadn't anticipated me tracing. Every claim, every document, every attempt to manipulate was unmasked, cataloged, and undeniable. Gary slammed his fist on the table, rattling the china, but the room's energy had shifted. The calm authority I exuded, honed through years of auditing and meticulous planning, left them paralyzed. Their scheme, carefully rehearsed over weeks, unraveled with each word I spoke. "I don't care what you sold. You still owe us," Gary roared, but the ledger, the documentation, the evidence all bore witness to their fraud. I leaned back, composed, voice steady and measured, revealing the calculated exposure of their financial deception. What they had thought would bind me in guilt had become the stage upon which their lies collapsed. In that room, the balance of power had shifted irrevocably. I was no longer a victim to be manipulated. I was the orchestrator of truth, exposing their deception with clarity and precision, leaving them stunned, vulnerable, and utterly powerless. The room had gone silent, but the tension had thickened, a heavy anticipation that something irreversible was about to unfold. I slid a printout across the table, its edge stopping neatly in front of Gary, right beside the greasy ledger. $180,000, I read aloud, the words echoing in the stunned quiet. Paid out in 2014 by the Victim Compensation Fund, the beneficiary Cody Reynolds. The color drained from my mother's face, her shock so complete she seemed to tremble. Gary's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a hook, disbelief and panic warring in his eyes. "You already got paid," I said, voice rising just enough to cut through their stupor. Every surgery, every therapy session, every aspirin, they claimed compensation from the state. That money was meant for his pain and suffering. Susan shrieked, grasping at the notion of moral justification. "It was compensation," she cried. "Exactly," I replied. "Compensation, which means the debt is settled." "But you didn't just spend it, did you?" "You spent it and then kept the ledger. You charged me for the same bills. That's double-dipping, Cody." His face fell. The smirk was gone, replaced by guilt so palpable it almost seemed to weigh the air itself. "You can't prove we spent it," Gary stammered, desperation creeping into his voice. "I don't have to," I said, calmly leaning forward, clinical and precise. "The bank records I pulled last night prove it. You used that money to pay off your gambling debts in 2015 to buy a boat you couldn't afford. Not a single dime went to Cody's care that the state hadn't already reimbursed." The legal implications hung heavy, undeniable fraud, theft, misrepresentation. Gary lunged for the paper, a futile act of aggression, and I pulled it back gently, a soft warning in my steady gaze. "Careful," I said, "that's just a copy. The original is already with my lawyer. Their plan to bind me with guilt, to manipulate the illusion of family duty had crumbled." I watched as they grasped, floundered, and understood too late that they had underestimated me. This wasn't a battle of anger or emotion. It was the law, the unassailable evidence, the calculated exposure of every moral and legal violation they had committed. Susan wailed about family, about loyalty, but I corrected the narrative with clarity. They didn't need the money for Cody. They needed it for themselves. The room's energy had shifted from confrontation to revelation, and in that moment, the stark moral weight of their actions, the emotional betrayal, and the incontrovertible legal consequences were all laid bare. I had turned their manipulation into evidence, their lies into proof, and in the clinical, unflinching delivery of truth, the tables had been irrevocably turned. I reached for the brass handle, the cool metal a promise of freedom. But before I could turn it, a heavy weight slammed against the door next to my head. Gary didn't just step in front of me. He threw his entire body against it, chest-heaving face inches from mine, smelling of stale coffee and desperation. "You're not going anywhere," he growled, low and animalistic. My hand held the phone up screen, flash and the call timer running. Calmly, I told him, the line has been open the entire time. Every threat, every felonious statement he had made, extortion, assault, false imprisonment, was being recorded in real time. He froze as the legal weight of his actions settled around him. Behind me, Susan whimpered, her fear unmistakable. I dialed 911, speaking softly into the phone as if narrating to the dispatcher what was unfolding. The sirens arrived moments later, shattering the suburban quiet blue and red lights, flashing through the transom painting, Gary's terrified face in alternation. Bang, 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 heavy fists pounded the door as police demanded it open. Gary's paralysis was complete. His attempts at control had evaporated under the combined force of law and evidence. I unlocked the deadbolt, stepping aside as two officers appeared, hands near their holsters, assessing the threat. "Ma'am, are you safe?" one asked. "I am now," I replied, moving past him without looking back. Gary and Susan were left with the realization that their manipulation threats and fraud had caught up with them. In that moment, the legal consequences crystallized: arrest for assault, extortion, false imprisonment, and the prior insurance fraud documented and undeniable. I stepped into the cool air of the driveway, finally free. Leaving behind the chaos, the threats, and the house that had been a trap for so long, the nightmare had ended, and the law had restored the balance. After the arrests, the consequences unfolded swiftly and irrevocably. The state moved to seize assets, recovering the funds that had been spent years ago, forcing bankruptcy liquidation of the house cars and other valuables. Cody faced probation and mandatory restitution, finally accountable for his role in the fraud. I meanwhile reclaimed control over my life. My financial independence was intact. The proceeds from the house sale sat safely in an index fund alongside my new salary. I felt the weight of a decade lift the relief of being no longer an asset to be exploited by those who had masqueraded as family. Sitting on my balcony overlooking the Seattle skyline, I let the quiet settle in. The coffee in my hand wasn't laced with anxiety. It was a simple, grounding pleasure. I reflected on balance and sovereignty, the realization that my peace and my boundaries were finally mine to protect. For the first time in 10 years, I wasn't in the red. I was whole, unshaken, and free. The blood debt had been repaid not through anger, but through meticulous preparation and unwavering control. The lesson was clear. Family does not have the right to demand your life, your resources, or your dignity. They can hope, they can demand, they can even threaten, but they cannot claim ownership over your sovereignty. And as the sun rose over the mountains, painting the city in soft gold, I understood the true cost of freedom and the profound value of finally being untethered from those who sought to manipulate me. It was a quiet, unassuming victory, but one that resonated deeply, echoing with the certainty that I now answer only to myself, and my life is no longer a ledger to be balanced by anyone else. The journey from manipulation and betrayal to control and independence is a testament to the power of patience, preparation, and self-respect. Standing in the aftermath of deceit, the narrator reclaimed her life, proving that boundaries and justice are non-negotiable. If this story resonated with you, consider liking and subscribing for more tales of resilience and truth. Have you ever had to stand firm against those who tried to take more than they deserved? Share your thoughts in the comments below.